Hey everybody, so I wanted to go over the vocabulary for Unit 7 just to make sure you guys have the right words. You'll see that I have put in not illustrations but pictures from online because I thought that was easier so you guys could see what was going on the screen. So neutrality, actually let me start first. All of these vocabulary words I have given you the definition and the historical contents. A context when I can. Some of them, it doesn't matter, whatever context it is. The word means the same thing, but some of them, we want to look at this in a particular context. So the word neutrality means to not support or help either side in a conflict, right? So this whole idea that the United States should stay out of the war, should stay out of foreign affairs in general. If you remember all the way back to George Washington, he requested of the people of the United States that we not make alliances with foreign entities, that we look out for ourselves, and that we not go kind of branching out to look at the world and see what they were doing, but really mind our own business. Just before World War I, America is really, really keen on staying out of the business of the world, right? Not dealing with that. We're gonna trade with people when we need to. We're gonna do those types of things, but we're not going to bring ourselves into a war because other people are engaged in a war. Now remember, at this point, the United States isn't far removed from the Civil War. They've kind of had enough war. They're not really interested in going back into some sort of bloodshed like they've had in their very recent past. So they're not real keen on caring about what other folks are doing, and they really just think that they can operate as an economic force, but not have to worry about being a military force at this point. Okay, isolationism goes right along with that word, right? Isolationism just means to isolate oneself, to stay to oneself. So this was like a belief or a policy that requires staying out of everybody else's business, basically, is really what it is. Like the social issues, the political issues, the economic issues, we're not going to deal with all those things. We're going to trade with people who want to trade with us, and we're not going to choose sides. Okay. A negotiation is a discussion that seeks to find solutions to problems, right? Seeks to find solutions to problems. Obviously, prior to and after World War I, there were a lot of negotiations between countries determining what was best for each country. Wilson's 14 points. Hopefully you've heard of these before today, probably from Ms. Stavalachi last year. These were the things that he believed the world should do, right? The United States should do, the world should do in order to bring about peace in the world. As I said in the video on Monday, he was really of the belief system that we should stay out of the war and that we should remain at peace. So he creates these 14 points. The 14th of his 14th points is the League of Nations, which we'll get to in a second. You need to make sure that based on the things that you've seen during this unit, you understand why it is an embarrassment. The League of Nations becomes an embarrassment to Woodrow Wilson and not something that he can be really proud of. Okay. He was the 28th president of the United States, Woodrow Wilson. He was set on keeping the U.S. out of World War I. He even ran his re-election campaign with the idea that America should stay out of the war. His slogan was, he kept us out of war, and then we went to war. So he had a hard time sort of putting those two things together for himself. Okay, he created the Plan for Peace and the idea of the League of Nations. Like I just said, we need to make sure we know why that was such a big deal, that he created the League of Nations and then the United States did not choose to join the League of Nations. Make sure you figured that out. Lusitania is a British ship that was sunk by the German government by a German submarine when submarine warfare had kind of been on a hiatus. And it's seen as one of the main reasons the U.S. entered World War I. Obviously, over the course of the time from the Revolutionary War to World War I, we do become allies with Great Britain. And so this is a big problem for the people of the United States and for the people of Great Britain. Okay, the Zimmerman telegram. I know Ms. Stavalachi taught you guys about the Zimmerman telegram. So it's a telegram sent by Zimmerman to the German minister in Mexico, and it stated that that submarine warfare was going to be used once again, and that Germany was going to attempt to form alliances with Mexico and Japan if the United States joined in the war, and that if that happened when Germany won, which they were confident they would, that they would force the United States to give Mexico back to Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, and parts of Southern California that they had taken during the Mexican-American War. Right? It was intercepted by the British, and it contributed to the U.S. entry into World War I. Obviously, the United States wasn't happy about that. The Treaty of Versailles, which is the agreement at the end of World War I that ends the war. Right? A treaty just means that both sides agree to stop fighting. So this ends the war, and it creates all the steps to Germany repairing Europe after the war. A lot of people say that the Treaty of Versailles is what actually is the major cause of World War II, which we'll get to later. Okay? The League of Nations was an international group created after World War I to help solve problems between countries before war broke out. Again, the United States was not a part of the League of Nations, although Woodrow Wilson is the person who came up with it. The Great Migration. This moves us into the 1920s, the Roaring 20s, after World War I, and this is a term for a time when over 6 million Black Americans moved out of the South and into the Northeast and the Midwest. So they left the South, the rough conditions of the South, and moved into friendlier racial conditions. We know that during this time we still had Jim Crow laws in effect in the Southeast, so they were moving out of those situations and into more racially friendly environments. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. That's called suffrage. Suffrage does not mean to suffer. Suffrage is the right to vote. And the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. Actually, it says that you cannot be forbidden the right to vote based on your gender or your sex. Okay? The Harlem Renaissance is an African-American intellectual, social, and artistic movement which centered around New York City in the 1920s. It's where we get jazz music. A lot of the poets that we know about, that we study in language arts class, we get from the Harlem Renaissance, right? Lots of dance, great music, good artwork, and lots of great literature came out of that time period. Prohibition, in the historical context, prohibition is the banning of alcohol in the United States. Flappers in the 1920s were fashionable young women who were intent on enjoying themselves. They were party girls, 1920s party girls. They wore clothes that weren't expected of them, shorter dresses, showed off their shoulders, all those good things. They went out and partied, they smoked, they danced, they drank alcohol, all kinds of things they weren't supposed to do, kind of not socially acceptable behaviors, and they sort of did them all. Okay, so that's your vocabulary. I hope you have all the answers correct. Feel free to listen to this more than once if you need to write things down. And remember, we will have a quiz on this on Monday.